Welcome to another episode of All Pop No Culture. This week is going to be something completely different. Um, Nobody showed up this week, so I'm kind of left on my own. And rather than not put out any content at all, I thought, why not put out some really mediocre content and put out an episode by myself? So this week I talk about Black Adam because I finally watched that. I definitely have some opinions about that, so listen to that. And then I cover the newest season of White Lotus. I will talk about Emily the Criminal, and I will finish off talking about the Brad Pitt and company film Bullet Train, which, spoilers, I thoroughly enjoyed. So as you know, as we always ask, don't forget to like, subscribe, set up notifications, and enjoy the show. All right, so here's to try new things this week. It may just be me this week. I don't know. I know Pete still has family stuff. Tried to get him on, begged and pleaded. He swears he loves you guys. He does get some leeway this week, some bonus points for actually posting the last two episodes of the podcast on the actual audio. So we can give him a little bit of a pass. He's at least participating more than before. So he's got that up on Apple and Spotify and all that jazz. We'll see how long it takes to get this episode up, but we'll keep our fingers crossed. I think if Andrew is out of town, so he won't be here, that leaves Andy, who was getting in, and he may or may not join. So this may all get cut, and I might start with Andy, or it might just be me rambling like an idiot. I don't know. I'm hoping he gets here because I this week I watched Black Adam. I made the mistake of buying Black Adam. It's streaming over there on all the services right now. It was $20 rent, $25 to buy, and I thought to myself, what's $5, right? Like, you're already spending 20, might as well spend 25. Then I can watch it again if I want to. And funny enough, I might actually watch it again. But it's probably not worth the extra $5. I'm Team Andy on this one versus Team Andrew. I think it was a very, very problematic film. Watching it, I really do. I like The Rock. I like Dwayne The Rock Johnson. He's a fun actor. He's a movie star. Curiously, he kind of goes against that. Quentin Tarantino, what was it, James Cameron or Steven Spielberg? Somebody else also said that that there's no movie stars anymore. We're just making movies, and the characters kind of outshine the stars. But I think this is the case of a film being made with a movie star in mind. I think you could see it in the marketing how much The Rock was pushing this, and how he hyped that there was going to be a special appearance at the end, and we all knew it was Henry Cavill as Superman, which is a fantastic thing to have, but to use it as a marketing tool kind of tells me that there's not a lot of faith necessarily in the movie. Wow. I just got a message from Pete that he might make it. So if I keep going and you see this whole thing and I've recorded by myself, that means Pete is a heartbreaker. He promised that he would show up, and then he didn't. But anyways, Black Adam was a horrendously problematic movie. It starts just for the fact that there's no hero in this movie. I mean, I guess to a degree it's the Sarah Shahi character and her son, but they don't really work for me. They're not very. I mean, their backstory is probably the most developed. They're living in this semi third world country, Kandak. They're trying to stand up to intergang, which is never really explained. Like the idea of intergang is kind of left up to the viewer to know who they are, and they're a huge crime syndicate in DC Comics. They're super villains in a lot of cases, um, but it never really gets explained very well in the show, or sorry, in the movie. So yeah, so it's I mean, they're the closest thing to a hero. She accidentally summons uh, Black Adam, Teth Adam, um, and and then it's kind of all downhill from there. I get this, so there's this group of people from Intergang are looking for this crown that can do something that we don't know what it does. They just want it. So um, their ambitions are never really explained. Like we don't really know why they're doing what they're doing. They but they want this crown, and so Sarah Shahi goes to find the crown. They get it. And when Black Adam is awoken, woke up when he hath risen. Um, our our resident DC Nick Fury type character. If you're an MCU fan, instead of a DC fan, is Amanda Waller. She runs the Suicide Squad. She's kind of the intelligence behind, everything on the hero side or the semi-hero side of the DC EU, which is no longer. But yeah, so she sends in. I don't know. She's got access to everybody in DC, and she sends in Hawkman and Dr. Fate and tells them to pick up two characters, Cyclone and Atom Smasher. And the biggest problem that I have with these characters is that none of them feel original. And it's not necessarily to any fault of the characters, right? I think um, Marvel and DC have existed alongside of each other for so long that the characters overlap in a lot of ways when it comes to skill sets, power sets, things like that. But Dr. Fate is uh, played by Pierce Brosnan, is probably the best acted character in the whole damn thing. He's actually really good. But as far as the superhero side of Dr. Fate goes, it throughout the movie feels like a Doctor Strange knockoff to the point where he clones himself to fight, Black Adam, and then later the bad guy Sabak. Um, and it just like I laugh because I messaged the guys during the week, and watching this, I was like, did anybody making this film not realize that they were completely ripping off Infinity War? There's just so much. If you go watch Infinity War and then go watch this, there's just so much that feels almost exactly the same. The way they choose to fight Black Adam and, like I said, then Sabak. Um, but anyways, and then Atom Smasher is effectively Ant-Man. All he does is get big and punch things. He doesn't really do much. I heard a lot of people really liked the character. I think maybe even Andy and Andrew liked the character. I wasn't a fan. I like the actor. He wasn't as funny in this as he usually is. The hero side of him wasn't very interesting. Um, I wasn't a fan of Hawkman, who historically I've liked a lot more. Um, but he didn't feel like the Hawkman that I've seen in other things. The Hawkman is, uh, as far as the character goes, he's ancient. Like uh, he dies and gets resurrected over and over and over again. And there's a whole love story aspect to that happening that doesn't come up in this film, which is fine. But it's problematic because just like every other character in this movie. You don't, other than Black Adam to a degree, you don't get a backstory. You're just handed these heroes um, and villains, and you don't really understand why they're doing anything they're doing. Um, so they caring about them is really hard. Hawkman feels like if you took Black Panther and Iron Man and Batman and kind of smashed them all together, you'd get Hawkman. And I don't recall Hawkman, at least in previous um, film and TV adaptations, um, being like super rich. And in this, he is. And maybe he is. I mean, it makes sense for his character to have a ton of money if he, you know, if he's been building wealth since, the pyramids were built. He could be super rich, but he flies in this fancy plane. He does all this stuff, and he's got his own secret lair and all that, and it just doesn't make sense. Doesn't really explain why he's got all this stuff. And if he's that powerful, like why is he answering to Amanda Waller? It's like it's like having Nick Fury send Black Panther somewhere. It just doesn't make sense. He's a pretty independent character. So anyway, so all these characters they fight Black Adam um, because he doesn't want to be a hero, but he meets this kid, which is a whole other problematic issue that the whole awakening of Teth Adam, who we think is the hero of Kandak, is that his son in back in history stood up to somebody that beat his dad, held up his hand like this, and somehow, for some reason that we don't understand, everybody was just like, yeah, that kid's our hero. And then the kid becomes Black Adam. And we find out later that the kid actually gives the powers to the dad, who is actually Black Adam. The kid is not Black Adam. And as soon as he transfers his powers, he gets killed. He gets killed by enemy forces, right? And so Black Adam goes, crazy and kills, all the bad guys or whatever. The Wizards decide to lock him up instead of stripping his powers, which I'm sure they could do. I don't know why they need to lock him up instead of taking his powers away. But they do. And so that's when we get to the beginning of the film, when Sarah Shahi's character wakes him up. And after battling Black Adam for a while and all this, somehow the heroes talk him down and point out that his son wouldn't have wanted him to be this character. And so, of course, he says Shazam, loses his powers, has them locked up, and they lock him in a prison cell. But while they're doing this, the Crown and the person that stole it kind of fuse together, and they create this bad guy named Sabak, who's the first like true villain of the movie. But at the same time, you have the same problem that you have with every other character in the movie. Like, this guy Sabak comes from something that looks like the stereotypical version of hell, but he doesn't he just is a bad guy. He just wants to sit on the throne of Kandak and destroy the world. But you don't ever really get any motivation beyond that. So he shows up and he essentially looks like he's built like Black Adam. He's got horns like the devil. He's got a big upside down star on his chest. Like, everything about him says devil. And so our reluctant group of heroes, which they call themselves the Just Society of America, but the Just Society of America was much bigger and had many more members back in the day. But anyway, so they show up, they fight, um, and they realize that they can't win. All the while during the movie, Dr. Fate has been seeing the future, where in the future, Hawkman's going to die, and he doesn't seem to like that. They're really good friends. Doesn't want his friend to die, so he's willing to sacrifice himself. And in the process of sacrificing himself, in a second fight where he does exactly the Doctor Strange thing, he projects himself into um, Black Adam's mind, who is locked in a cell and peacefully sleeping, and somehow it wakes him up. And another thing that I don't understand, he wakes up in this prison as in the form of his body that couldn't ever fight back against the army that they were facing in the past, in the distant past, before the kid was given powers. And somehow he fights off all these well-trained, well-armed, soldiers of the future, right? Fights them all off without saying Shazam, without giving himself his powers. Then escapes, drowns, almost dies, and then, of course, at the most convenient moment, comes to, says Shazam, shows up, fights Sabak. There's a big battle, and he wins. And it's just all so convenient and so corny and so cheesy, and like so many things just don't work about this movie. And there's an article that came out, I think this week. I think it was before we aired the last episode, or before we recorded the last episode, that said that for this movie to be a success, it needs to make around $600 million, because it was around $200 to make. There was $100 million in marketing, which is $300 million, which sounds like that's all they need to make. But apparently, I've never heard this come up before, so this was new to me. But theaters that are airing the movie get half of what is made. So if a film goes out and makes $600 million in the theater, the studio is only making $300 million, which means that's $600 million is the breaking point for them to break even. And at this point, Black Adam's only made, I think, $400 million. So it's coming in super short, and it's considered a flop, even though it's making almost $500 million at this point. $500 million isn't enough anymore. So it's really interesting. And then with all the shakeups at DC this week with James Gunn, they've announced that Man of Steel 2 might not happen. That's up in the air. Wonder Woman 3 is completely canceled, which I'm okay with. I think Patty Jenkins likes Patty Jenkins a lot, and she's got a lot of confidence in herself, which is great. But Wonder Woman 84 was a garbage film. And the story is that the guys at DC, Gunn and his people, took a look at the script and said, no, this doesn't work. We need to rewrite the script. And by all accounts, they were willing to work with her to rewrite that script. But it looks like she said, no, it's right. You guys don't understand character arcs. You don't understand what we're doing. And she refused to rewrite it. So she walked, which I would say is respectable at some point, except she's standing behind kind of garbage. And if you're not willing to fit into the future, then you don't fit. So, I don't know her personally, but it seems like she made kind of a mistake. So DC is scrapping a bunch of stuff. Curiously, they're still going to ride the Flash out next year. But James Gunn at this point is really looking at redoing everything. There's a possibility that even though Henry Cavill is back, as Superman for the moment and showed up in Black Adam, he may not be back as Superman in the future. It's really hard to tell right now. So we'll see where that goes. It could be. There could be huge shifts going on at DC as far as the films go. which is a good thing. I think we've said it on the show many times that it at this point DC really needs a reboot. I will find it interesting to see if a show like Peacemaker, which was actually made by James Gunn, manages to stick around post reboot. It does reference, the Snyderverse Justice League at the end. So we'll see. There's films like Blue Beetle coming out that they're promoting pretty heavily, or starting to promote pretty heavily. That I don't know if it fits into the future of the DCU. So yeah, we'll see. But as far as Black Adam goes, I mean, by all means, watch it. It's an action flick for sure. There's so much fighting in the movie, um, which I know was one of the things that The Rock was selling. But man, I again, I said it before. I do like Dwayne Johnson. I love his work, especially when he gets to be funny, which he is not in this, by the way. He doesn't get to deliver any comedic lines, which he is actually pretty good at. He's pretty good at being a big funny action star, not necessarily a comedian like somebody like Ryan Reynolds, but he can deliver the funny lines usually pretty well. But you strip that away, and you need a character that is really genuinely passionate about saving his country, his world. Um, and I don't think he played the emotion very well at all, unfortunately. Um, he was so flat and so one note. The things that he should have been genuinely like heatedly passionate about just weren't there. And it's interesting to me because when he was on Ballers, show about him as an NFL agent or a sports agent, not just NFL. Um, I thought he was a pretty solid actor in that, and there were things he had to be passionate about, and it never quite came across. So I don't know. I don't know. It doesn't seem like there's going to be a Black Adam 2. There's a lot of reasons for that. Number one, obviously, this is money. Number two, if it doesn't make enough money to get remade, then obviously they wouldn't bring it into the the DCU. Maybe if things go great in the next Shazam, they'll have a reason to bring The Rock back as Black Adam in Shazam 3, I guess. But I still stand by that being the mistake. I think Black Adam would have been great revealed as either a villain or an anti-hero on a smaller scale in a Shazam film, and then do this film. I don't think it works to have the heroes show up with no backstory in the film. I think you need to know more about them for it to work too. So like all in all, I mean I can't really recommend Black Adam if you want to just watch people hit each other and stuff get blown up. Give it a shot. I would definitely say wait until it streams. Don't pay for it if you don't have to. If you already paid for it, I'm sorry. It was only okay. So yeah, that's my take on Black Adam. I think Andy and Andrew went back and forth on it before. Andrew kind of liked it, which having watched this film now, I'm actually shocked by. Andy hated it, which I was a little shocked by. But I'm definitely team Andy on this one. I think it was kind of a garbage film. It was a big budget mistake. It was just not good. Um, so before I get into the film behind me, Bullet Train, because I'm going to talk about that. I really enjoyed that film. But there's two other things that I watched this week. First off is White Lotus. White Lotus season 2 came out on HBO about a month and a half ago, I guess, because it seems like it's going every week. It's a weekly release, and it was a well acted show, well made show. But I didn't really enjoy the first season. It was really kind of depressing. It was like people on vacation and just nothing went right for anybody. Like it was kind of a downer. Again, well made, like the acting was good, the writing was good. The character work, like everything about it was good. I just didn't like it. Which is to say that obviously becomes a personal preference, right? Like that's okay. I think it had some award buzz, might have even won an award. Um, but it was well made. I was going to skip season two, and then I saw that Aubrey Plaza was in it, and I like Aubrey Plaza. I like Aubrey Plaza going back to Parks and Recreation. She's funny, she's quirky, she's weird. But curiously, in both this and the other movie that I'm talking about in a minute, Emily the Criminal, um, she's really taken on a little bit of a heavier acting role and stepped back from the humor. Like any humor that she has in the new season of White Lotus is um, very dry and almost snarky when she's just being um, kind of grumpy with her husband. Um, but the idea behind White Lotus, both season one and two, is that it takes place at a White Lotus resort, which is a chain of resorts. The first season takes place somewhere tropical. It could be Hawaii or something along those lines, or Tahiti or something. I don't remember. This one takes place in Sicily, or at least in Italy. Some characters go to Sicily at one point, but it takes place in Italy, and so um, there's a lot of Italian. There's a lot of subtitles in this one. There's a couple of characters specifically that speak heavy Italian and don't always speak English, which is okay. It works if you as long as you pay attention, you'll be just fine. Just read the subtitles and you're good. Um, but at this resort, we have a few characters. So we have an old school like mob show actor, Michael Imperioli. He's been around. We've got F. Murray Abraham in this one. John Grease, whose name you probably don't know, but he's been around. Um, and then a lot of kind of smaller actors after Aubrey Plaza. Oh, and of course Jennifer Coolidge reprises her character's role from the first film. And actually, so does John Grease. He plays her now husband in this one. Um, and so this season of White Lotus, I don't want to give too much away because the season finale um, is actually well, what is now tomorrow night, the 11th. But I would recommend to anybody listening. Like I said, I'll try to not spoil it. If you're going to watch it, definitely watch it. By the time this airs, this episode airs, the last episode will have been out, so hopefully I'll have watched it. Um, it's definitely a puzzler. So one thing that happens in both shows is they both open up with the indicating that somebody died at the resort, and so the whole show is kind of building up to figuring out who it was that died and how. And so they build suspense kind of behind that around all these characters and the things that are going on and all the things that are going sideways for them. Um, and truthfully, things generally are going kind of shitty for a lot of these characters. Um, you got again Michael Imperioli who shows up. He's estranged from his wife. He brings his dad, F. Murray Abraham. They're trying to, and his son, played by Adam DeMarco, who I'm not familiar with, although he looks a little familiar. But they're trying to search Sicily to see if there's any members of their family because they're old Italian. And so that's their goal. But the dad is estranged because he's a sex addict. F. Murray Abraham is kind of the very sweet but dirty old man. And then Adam DeMarco, the son, is kind of trying to be different than them, like he's trying to be a good guy. But in the dad's sexual addiction, he ends up calling a prostitute in, and she brings a friend. So there's two prostitutes in the storyline, and they're actually a lot of fun. They definitely kind of have a Pretty Woman vibe. There's one that's she's not even actually a prostitute. I don't think she's friends of the main girl that is the prostitute. And and like they're sweet. The one girl wants to become a singer. They want to be able to run away to the U.S. at some point. Jennifer Coolidge and her husband show up with her assistant, who totally doesn't, who totally wants to be there, but she thinks she's going to be able to go and have fun. And Jennifer Coolidge's character is totally crazy and won't let her have fun. Like even when she's out of her sight, she tells her to stay in her room and not do anything, which she doesn't do. So the shenanigans ensue there. Um, but then the Aubrey Plaza story is her and her husband are going with another couple to the island to just have this vacation. The other husband is played by Theo James, who is been around, so he's definitely recognizable. Also, and there's a lot of tension between these two because Aubrey Plaza's husband just kind of hit it big and sold his company for a bunch of money, and Theo James and his wife are rich, like they're well off. But you can tell there's some kind of scheming because Theo James and Aubrey Plaza's husband went to college together, so they have history. And there's some really weird dynamics there. Um, but all in all, I mean, it's an interesting show. Like I said, I don't want to give too much away, but tension is definitely abound in this one. I think this season, for me, I haven't seen how it rates out, but this season to me is better than the first one. I'm really excited to see where it finishes. I'm looking at IMDb real quick. All the episodes from this season are an 8 or higher. The season, sorry, the third to last episode, so episode, what is it, 5, is an 8.9. It's almost a 9. So it did really well. Season 1, everything kind of rates out around 7s. So it looks like anyways, that excuse me, it looks like the ratings kind of indicate that, yeah, season 2 is a little bit better than season 1. So I mean, I definitely recommend it if you're into some drama. There's not a lot of comedy, and the comedy that fits is more of a natural humor. Um, but it's okay. It's not a bad show at all. Um, and I hope it looks like from the IMDb page, that they think they're going to get a third season. So that'll be cool. If it comes out, I think I'll actually be more excited for the third season than I was for the season that I almost didn't watch, and now I'm really glad I did. So yeah, so that's that. And then next up, I watched a film called Emily the Criminal. It was very highly ranked on Netflix. It was like their third most watched film behind Bullet Train and something else. But it stars Aubrey Plaza and Theo Rossi from Sons of Anarchy. He's been around in other stuff too, but that's really kind of his big thing. And this one, again, I love Aubrey Plaza. I think she's so funny and so talented. But this movie again really takes her her comedic roots out of the mix and lets her shine as an actress. It was rated on Rotten Tomatoes from the critics at 94%, from the audience at 79%. IMDb has it as a 6.7. So for me, that's kind of where it fell. I'm closer to the IMDb rating, I think, than anything else. Overall, it was sort of like the first season of White Lotus. It was a film that was really kind of depressing. It wasn't very uplifting. So the story is that this girl, it starts off, she has had a rough history. She's got a temper. She went to school for art and design and marketing and things like that. But it turns out that she had a DUI when she was younger. She assaulted someone when she was younger, and so she's got these things on her record that are keeping her from moving up in the world, from getting a job in a field that she likes. or any kind of work that she wants to be doing. And so she's struggling. She's working kind of a dead end catering job to try and get by. And at one point, she's on the phone with a debtor or a debt collector, who, she's like, "Oh, I just paid you last month. Why didn't it go down?" They're like, "Yeah, everything you paid only went to cover your interest." So like she's not making any headway in the bills she owes. Um, and so she's really struggling. And so a coworker tells her, "Hey, go check out this job. It's for," uh, they don't call it a secret shopper, but it's essentially it's supposed to be a secret shopper. Where if you've ever worked in retail, you always had to watch out for the secret shoppers. They would come in and buy something and then rate the store. Well, it turns out these aren't real secret shoppers that they're trying to do. They're pulling a scam. It's actually a credit scam. The idea here is that Theo Rossi's character Yusuf runs this credit scam where he's taking a bunch of credit card numbers. He prints up new credit cards for people, and he tells them, "Look, all you have to do," he's like, "if you want this job, you get $200 cash when you're done. You just have to be okay with doing something illegal." And what they have them do is go in, take these fake credit cards, pay for whatever item, bring it out, leave it with somebody else, and go. That's all they have to do is pay for it, walk out, and then leave. Um, and so she doesn't, she's hesitant about it, but she decides to do it. And it turns out it works, and it's super easy. I think they give her a second job, which I don't remember, and then she has a third job that she does. Um, and apparently, before I go too far, it's I think I'm probably going to give away some spoilers on this. So if you haven't watched it yet, you might want to skip ahead a little bit. But she takes the second job. She all of a sudden kind of gets um, this feeling from it where she's getting the money. She's feeling successful for the first time in a long time. Um, and so she decides to take another job, and in this job they actually have her steal a car, and it goes a little sideways. She kind of gets her ass kicked, um, and she gets the car and she gets out of there with the car, but she gets beat up by the car salesman, and so she's just about done. But this guy Yusuf is there to kind of comfort her. So she starts to catch feelings for Yusuf, right? And so she gets it into bed with him both later for real, but business wise, she gets into bed with him and starts running these scams on her own. She gets into a few bad situations from it because she's not prepared for it, but at the same time, she's really good at thinking on her feet. So at one point, somebody follows her to her house and tries to beat her up and steal all the money she's made. And at first she kind of takes it and then she's like, "No, fuck that." And she gets her taser. She goes running out and tases this guy, beats the living crap out of him, takes the girl who was trying to attack her's ID, says, "Now I know where you live. Don't ever do this again." And really it's about, like, I don't want to give any more spoilers. It's another film much like I said, it reminds me a lot of the first season of White Lotus, where um, there's no real positives to this movie. It's well made, well acted. Aubrey Plaza's great. Theo Rossi's great. Everybody in it's solid. It's just not very uplifting, in that it almost hits too close to home for life in today's world, and maybe that makes it a good movie. But if you're most people, most Americans, these days, you probably have some debt. You've probably struggled to pay some of that debt, and you've probably had to, you know, for most people, you probably push that debt around. You don't pay it off, or you pay something else, and then you come back to it, or whatever. But you can definitely see where this girl and her situation fell into this rabbit hole that she falls into, and she doesn't necessarily get herself all the way out. Go um, it doesn't go as well, as you would think. Or, I mean, I guess not as well as you would think. It doesn't go as well as as she would like it to. It has a very, in a lot of cases, a very realistic feel to it. I mean, she gets away with a lot of stuff that, you know, at some point in real life would probably get us all killed or injured or hospitalized, so of course there's that little bit of suspension of disbelief, but these are all things that are real these days. Identity theft, credit theft, all that stuff is very real. So, like I said, that may be what for me made it hard to watch, but does make it a good film, is that it is very real in that regard. Um, so, I mean, I would definitely recommend checking it out, especially if you're in the mood for something a little more dramatic. Um, like I said, not a lot of comedy. She's a very angry character. She doesn't really surround herself with particularly funny people. Um, so go in with that in mind, and if you're down for some drama, give it a watch. Now, since Pete's a big dirty liar, Andy is doing God knows what. I've been on my own, and I have gotten to Bullet Train, starring, oh, can't see him because of my chair, one Mr. Brad Pitt. And then everybody, like, this is a big ensemble cast. I would say for sure that Aaron Taylor Johnson, this dude, Brian Tyree Henry, who is great, and Joey King are really the three, besides Brad Pitt, are really the stars of the film. There's a lot of more ancillary characters that are in there. But this movie was a lot of fun, like very different than the other stuff I've talked about so far. I loved Bullet Train, and I will probably watch it again. Um, I've seen it compared to Kill Bill, which I get, but it's definitely funnier. There's a silliness to it um, that I think we kind of needed. There's a lot of people in this um, that don't really spend a lot of time on screen, and don't necessarily bring a whole lot. Like Zazie Beetz is in it, Karen Fukuhara's in it. I would say Zazie Beetz brings more than Karen Fukuhara in this case. Who, by the way, I love Karen Fukuhara. She's great on The Boys, but her part's pretty small. Masi Oka from the Heroes, from Heroes back in the day. He's in it, but doesn't necessarily do a whole lot. Um, Sandra Bullock does mostly voice work for the whole film. Um, Michael Shannon's in it. He doesn't do a lot, but they do bring their own thing. So definitely not discounting them. They're just, it's interesting to see them as kind of bigger names that aren't driving the entire movie. Whereas, these two, Aaron Taylor Johnson and Brian Tyree Henry, they call them the twins, but effectively everybody in this movie is an assassin. And so Brad Pitt is sent to recover a briefcase. And funny enough, he gets on this train. He's got this whole dialogue with his handler that, if you recognize voices at all, it doesn't ruin the film at all. So is Sandra Bullock, and she, they have a great conversation, about how he's stepping in for some other hitman. And it's just, it's some fun snappy dialogue. He doesn't like to use guns. He thinks he's really unlucky, but it seems like as you watch the film, bad stuff always happens to him, but for good reasons. Like, it always kind of saves him. So it's kind of funny to watch as that unfolds. But what we find out is he gets on the train, immediately finds the suitcase, and he's like, shit, I think I'm already done. He's about to get off the train. And then these two guys, the twins here, it turns out they already had the case. And so, uh, they realize it's missing, so they need to find him and get after it. And it's really hard to explain this movie without giving too much away, because it's so frenetic. It's so wild and crazy and fun. But like, everybody intertwines. So it definitely has this old school, like I said, kind of Kill Bill feel to it, where all of these characters All of their stories kind of come together. Everybody's after the same thing. Everybody's willing to kill anybody that gets in their way, um, to get it. And it's, I mean, it's a lot of fun. I want to give a more lengthy review, because I really did enjoy it so much. It's rated higher on IMDb than Emily the Criminal was. It's a 7.3 instead of a 6.7, which is a pretty hefty jump in my opinion. But on over on Rotten Tomatoes, funny enough, it got a 53 from the critics, which I strongly disagree with, and a 76 from the audience, which I almost still disagree with a little bit. I think it should be a little bit higher. I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. The dialogue again is all snappy. The action's really excellent. Um, Brad Pitt is Brad Pitt at his best. I think when he gets to be a little funny, a little silly, it benefits him. He was, if you think back to something like the Ocean's films and his character in that, he's a little zanier than that, maybe. Um, but it's some vintage, some prime Brad Pitt, in my opinion. It's really fun to see um, uh, this film in a very tight space, right? Everything's happening on this bullet train, and it lends itself to that bit of tension too, because these guys can't get away, and every time they try to get off the train to get away, something goes sideways and they get kind of thrust back onto the train, because the train does make a few stops along the way. um, I am not familiar with his work, but Bad Bunny shows up in this as a character. He's actually not bad. His part's pretty small, um, but yeah, I mean, all in all, it was a really cool, fun flick um, that I thoroughly enjoyed. Again, the relationship between the twins is great. They call them the twins because they grew up together, and because they're hitmen and assassins. No one's ever seen them before, right? Or nobody, has lived to tell the tale. So everybody thinks they're twins. So when they show up to places, they're kind of difficult to identify. Um, People don't know what's coming until it's too late. But they have some fantastic dialogue between the two of them. Um, and what are their names? Their names are, they call themselves Lemon and Tangerine, which they explain their names pretty early on, and that's hilarious. Um, and this film is also directed by, if I'm not mistaken, the guy that directed Deadpool 2. So you can kind of see where, excuse me, you can kind of see where some of that, where that comedy comes in. He also directed Fast and Furious, Hobbs and Shaw, which I will say is not among my favorite films, but he definitely he did a good job here. So um, yeah, overall, I definitely recommend a Bullet Train. Funny enough, last week Andrew and I talked about how we hadn't seen Train to Busan, which I intended to watch this week because I really need to watch that film. Like, I've started it once or twice, and haven't got anywhere near far enough in it. Um, but I didn't, and I thought that'd be a fun follow up to this. So hopefully I'll get to it next week. Although I may try to talk the guys next week into doing something a little more Christmas oriented. I think if we record next week, we'd be recording on the 17th, and it would drop somewhere around the 20th, so 22nd, somewhere in there, 21st. So it'd be a good time to do our little Christmas episode. So we'll see what happens there. But yeah, with that, I'm about at the end of my run. I'm not particularly interesting left all by myself. This was definitely an experiment born out of everybody being busy. So if you made it to the end, I really appreciate it. I had nothing better to do, and I don't have any friends, and they don't show up, and I think nobody likes me. So I hope you like me, and made it to the end. I hope you like me enough to forgive this entire episode and whatever madness it was. I have no idea what I've even talked about. Um, but I do hope you enjoyed it. I hope, or at least enough, got some information out of it. Um, we'll be back next week. Andrew's back in town, so he's the only reliable one left. So maybe next week it'll just be me and Andrew talking about Christmas movies, which is hilarious in its own way because Andrew has never been a fan of Christmas movies. Although I did hear that he watched Spirited and enjoyed it. So I'm going to try to finish that for next week, so we can talk about that. Um, I of course will, come up with some other Christmas movies to watch. I've seen a bunch of them. My favorites are Elf and National Lampoon's Christmas Vacation. Um, so yeah, with that, we're just about done. I think I'm gonna edit this and post it up. I wasn't sure, but screw it. Um, it is what it is. So again, I hope you guys enjoy it. If you haven't already, please like the episode. Please subscribe. Leave a comment. Tell me how much you miss Andrew and how you wish he was the one hosting the show by himself, or if by some crazy chance you enjoyed it. Leave me a comment. Let me know. I kind of came in blind this week with only a little bit on my slate, and you can definitely tell that this is a shorter episode. If everybody had been here, we could have ranted and tangented and stuff like that. But I appreciate it. So, as always, thank you very much, and have a great week.